Poor Aljamain Sterling. Every time he builds up some fan favor, he then elects to kind of dump on it a little bit. Now, I want to be clear about this. Here's what happened. So he wins at UFC 280, and here's what the fans saw. The fans saw a guy in Sterling in phenomenal condition go out there and just beat the shit out of TJ Dillashaw for however long it lasted. We all know the story about Dillashaw being horribly injured going into it. But it wasn't like a guy like Aljamain Sterling took a ton of damage in the fight. He took virtually nothing. I'm not even sure if he had a punch landed on him. He didn't resist any offense. It was just how much work could you do from the back and mount. So it's over. He does a little bit of media. And then this week, he comes out and says, yeah, I'm not going to fight until June. BC, before we go to you on this, we have a video about it. I'd like to play the video, and then I want to get your reaction if I can. Let's roll the video.
Is this thing on? Oh. Okay, so this is a message to all my bantamweights out there. For all the people that actually been in a 5-round fight, you know how intense those 5-round training camps are. Especially mine, because I go hard in the paint. Henry, you should know exactly what I'm talking about. You've been through these 5-round camps, but you've been on the sidelines for 2.5 years. So I have no problem fighting you, Henry. I just want the biggest fight. And if that's you, then step up to the plate. If you want to wait for the boy, you can wait. If not, go take another fight and kick rocks. Cheeto, Sandhagen, Sean O'Malley, whatever. Any one of you guys, man, if you want to wait for me, give me some time to let my body heal. It's not easy for me to make 135. And again, these 5-round training camps are not these 3-round fights where people make these quick turnarounds. That's why champions don't typically fight more than 1 time a year. 2 if they're lucky. So I fought twice already. Give me a little bit of time, and I'll come back and kick everybody's ass. Let's go. Funk out.
Your reaction.
Wow. Remember that song by Extreme? If you don't like what you see here, get the funk out. Okay, I guess I was alone in 1991. Yeah. It's off of that Pornography album. Okay, anyway, back to this, Luke. Here's the deal. Is that a fair statement from Aljo? 5-round camps are, hard and arduous, and he just went through another one. Yes. If Aljo had more money in the bank from the standpoint of his accomplishments as champion and his recent track record, it wouldn't be ridiculous to say, look, I've been running hot and hard. Instead of fighting maybe Cejudo in February, can we just push it back, 3 more months or 4 more months to June? Maybe. But this is not the situation Aljo's in. The situation Aljo's in is he's atop currently the deepest division in the sport and arguably of all time. As much as people hate when we constantly put that tag on it, it's just where it's at. And to your earlier point of him, whether it's his fault or not, can't really get out of his own way. Look, he won the title by DQ. Not his fault, but the way things played out afterwards, he kind of became a villain. And then he was out a long time before we finally got that rematch, which held up the division. Then TJ Dillashaw got hurt after earning a number 1 contender spot, more or less, and that held up the division further. And even though Aljo, I give him so much credit for turning the narrative back around by beating Jan in their rematch, it was also a split decision, and there are Jan truthers. I don't agree with that, but there are, meaning it wasn't some dominant, clear win. And then, also not his fault once more, he finally goes to fight TJ, and we saw what happened. The shoulder popped out instantly. It wasn't a fight. Luke, he doesn't have, it's not like Ngannou. It's not like that, his knee didn't fall apart. I don't think he has the leverage right now to make this kind of demand when this division is already so hot. I mean, Sean O'Malley just beat Jan. Someone, fair, not, I want to say fair and square. It was disputed, right? But he won the fight. This is a deep, loaded division that has already been bottlenecked. We kind of need some clarity. Cejudo might parachute in, as Ariel reported and others, that this is what UFC's trying to target. Look, UFC doesn't give leverage like this to guys unless they're super accomplished. Remember when Ngannou finally beat Stipe and he became the champion, and then the UFC was like, fuck you, you can't come back in 3 months? All right, we're putting an interim title out there and we're going to shit talk you for the rest of the time because you want to fight in 5 months instead of 3. I don't see how this is going to work in his favor. I mean, would the UFC strip him? No, it doesn't deserve to be stripped.
No.
The most likely scenario is they probably just put an interim title on the line and we see O'Malley step up and fight for it. But is this a good look? Is this a continuation of great PR for Aljo, whether it's his fault or not? No, it's a continuation of him kind of looking like a somewhat of a trolling villain. It's not all fair, but that's the reality. Look, I'm not like, does he have a major injury that's keeping him out right now? It doesn't seem like he does. He's banged up. I can respect that. But you're always banged up at this level.
Okay, but here's the thing, if you're Aljo, right? Now, if I were his PR representative, I probably would have had him package the message a little bit differently to make it more palatable. But you got to back up a second here, and you got to understand Aljamain's position. So you have finally ascended to the very top of this division. You had what is well, more than your first title defense, but you had your first, what was supposed to be real title defense. It fell apart in the sense that nothing he did was wrong. Everything he did was right. He took the fight, and, it was what it was, but that's not on Aljo. But, you are now, fight after fight, you're going to be facing either the very next toughest guy or someone approximately in that level. This is the peak of your earning potential. This is the peak of your leveraging powers, whatever they may be. If you're Aljamain Sterling, you're saying to yourself, I think from what he's saying, I cannot go into these fights fucked up. I cannot. I don't have the luxury. This is it. This is the moment in my career to make maximum money against the maximally tough guys on the biggest cards that the UFC can hold or something like that, right? I cannot go into these fucked up. And if you've had a 5-round camp, I realize that the problem is the fans see what happened in the fight, which was basically nothing to him. And they're like, oh, you should be fine. But you have no idea, dude. That neck injury kept him out for a long time. You just have no idea what injuries he's dealing with. He didn't disclose them. I kind of feel like he should have. If I was his PR rep, I kind of feel like he should have disclosed a little bit more of that to help folks understand. But I get Aljamain's position. However, we should also acknowledge that while I fully understand why he's doing what he's doing, I just don't think the UFC is necessarily going to be all that accommodating. I think this kind of declaration is almost certain to put a interim title in play. I just feel like they're going to do that. Now, they might not. It seems like there's some possibilities around that, but it seems like they're probably going to, especially if Cejudo gets back involved or Sean O'Malley gets back involved or is in the title picture one way or the other. So, while I'm very sympathetic to Aljamain Sterling's position, I think people just don't have really any clue what these guys go through to get ready for 5-round fights. And I know you've said, I saw X fighter do it. I saw Y fighter do it. Right, but that doesn't mean they weren't dealing with injuries. And how many fighters have we seen go through with fights when they were fucked up and then the fights themselves were a disaster? Hello, TJ Dillashaw just did that. They'll do it all the time. He wants to give himself the best opportunity to give himself a chance to win, to hold on to this position. But the UFC is built on turnover. Turning over events, getting fights made, moving the trains out of the station on time. That's what they're about. And if you don't facilitate that, they'll just go around you. And I tend to think what you're going to get here is one way or the other, sooner or later, you're probably going to get an interim title fight out of this. With who? I don't know. But that's what I think is we're headed next.
Okay, you're right. Aljo's really not doing much wrong here. And again, some of those things like the DQ and the TJ getting hurt, it's not his fault. But PR-wise, saying champions are lucky, they fight once a year, lucky to fight two. No, in boxing, maybe. That's sometimes our biggest problem. Fighters don't fight enough. The highest level of the UFC, Luke, they tend to fight fairly often. Am I wrong?
Well, let's spin it back because you kind of said something very interesting, which was Aljo's not doing anything wrong. I think in terms of preserving his interests, I don't think he's doing anything wrong. In terms of his messaging to the public, I think he probably could have done it a little bit differently. I would have been like, listen, here's the reality. I've got these things that are affecting me. I don't trust my ability to compete favorably to you guys. What I don't want to do is what Dillashaw did against me. I don't want to cheat my opponents. I don't want to cheat the sport. I don't want to cheat the fans. I understand that this is frustrating. I want to get better as soon as I possibly can. It's just I can't make the kind of turnaround that folks expect. I don't think there'd be a welcoming message to that necessarily, but I don't think you'd see the harsh reaction that was greeted to this message. Would you agree, or am I overstating it?
You're right. It's just, again, I don't know if he has that leverage to demand this. And the division is dude, this is the best division in the game. Look, if they put an interim title on the line and he's allowed to wait until June, then he wins and it works, right? And is there an overflowing of names you can do? Look, if they did, here's a matchup I don't think a single person has talked about. Could you do Cejudo versus Sean O'Malley for the interim title in February?
You sure could.
Okay, so the reality is that fixes that, and maybe I'm being a dick. But I guarantee you there's going to be a conversation with Dana and Aljo on the phone that's going to sound a lot like one of the best movie quotes that I can bring up. Do you remember that 1993 college football cinematic classic called The Program, Luke? You remember that great movie?
Yes, where they laid down in the road.
Yes, which I saw opening night before they pulled that scene out of the flick. By the way, I saw that opening night, and my football team, Naugatuck High School, was in the theater in Waterbury, and so was Crosby High, and they got into a brawl in the theater while the shit was going on the screen, sold out. It was great. James Conn, the one of the all-time greatest, Luke. Remember he looked at that running back that got Omar Epps that got nailed, and he goes, "Are you hurt or are you injured?" Because there is a difference, Luke, right?
Are we really going to do this bit where we're policing Aljamain Sterling's toughness?
No,
really?
I'm not saying that's coming from me. I'm saying I guarantee you that's going to be a call he has with the UFC.
Oh,
anyway, the larger point is, if they make something like Cejudo versus O'Malley, dude, that's a fucking event, right? I mean, that's a great ass fight. So
this is why I think the UFC is going to be like. This is why I think the UFC is going to look at what Aljamain did, and they're going to be like, okay, fine. We're just going to move on with the division. Like, you can do what you got to do. They're not going to strip him because he obviously is intending to come back. And June it's the end of second quarter, which is late, but not the end of the world per se. But I think they're just going to be unsympathetic to it. This is ultimately the reality. It's like, what would you want with a message like that? You would want to give some transparency to the rest of the division, which he did. He did. I'm going to be out for X amount of time. You got that. And you would want some kind of understanding of your situation. I don't think he necessarily got that with it. However, BC, this could all prove to be for naught. Because let's bring up your point here. Imagine UFC does, in fact, make a Sean O'Malley versus Henry Cejudo interim title fight. I don't know that they will, but let's assume for the sake of conversation that they do. Whoever wins that, once you unify the belts, that's going to make the fight even fucking bigger. It's going to, if Cejudo walks in there with another belt, or Sean O'Malley walks in there with a belt, they're gonna challenge his legitimacy for Sterling. They're gonna challenge everything about it. It's gonna make it even bigger. They're gonna make him the villain. By the way, they're gonna present themselves as the saviors of the division, whether any of that is true or not. So, like, on the one hand, we're sitting here hand wringing about his message. On the other hand, it may not make a difference. They're gonna make an interim title. I doubt Sterling cares, but it makes the whole thing bigger in the end anyway.
And just to be fair on pot and kettle here, like, this is kind of what Alexander Usyk just did, right? Saying, I got a couple nagging injuries. I know I just beat Joshua a second time. We all want me to fight Fury. Can we push that out until March? And, we all know what happened. Fury has this seemingly unnecessary Chisora fight first. So, I'm not trying to say Aljo is wrong here. I just think the optics, it doesn't look great. UFC is a different setup than boxing. And do you think this F's Sterling anyway in terms of leverage with the company? Because the company doesn't look at this and go, "Oh yeah, no problem, go for it. Tell us when you're going to be ready." They're going to be like, "Fuck you, business goes on." Does this hurt him in the long run? Does he lose negotiation leverage with this?
Hard to say. I mean, you're right. Like, the UFC is like, these trains are all leaving the tracks at these times. Either you're going to get on it or you're not going to get on it. And if you're not going to get on it, you're just going to get left behind. Whether or not that is fair, whether or not that's how they should do it, that is how they do it. I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine that they love it, but at the same time, it's not like they don't have some options. Bantamweight is hot. Everyone else besides Sterling, or I shouldn't say everyone else, but there are other names anyway outside of Sterling that are hot. Cheeto's hot. Corey Sandhagen had a nice win to come back as he did. Obviously, Sean O'Malley's doing things. Henry Cejudo.
Can I interrupt you?
By the way, we have a response from Cejudo.
Well, before you get to Cejudo, I just want to ask you this, okay? I just threw out Cejudo and O'Malley kind of like on the fly, and I was like, damn, that'd be great. Is it in reality, though, because Cejudo also has to, like, get in a camp and get back and all that, and I know he's been in the drug testing pool. Is Marlon Vera versus O'Malley Part 2 the actual better fight that accomplishes everything?
Hard to know if it's better because we don't know what we're going to get from Cejudo, but that's a damn good fight. A damn good fight. I think
it keeps everybody happy, right? I mean, it really keeps everybody happy.
I scored the fight for Jan over O'Malley, but I thought O'Malley performed very well and clearly showed he was a high-level guy. And again, you can make a case for him that he won independent of whether or not the judges agreed one way or the other. So I really thought pretty highly of what he did. And I think a second fight, I mean, we said it before, dude, Chito Vera is the king of the 5-rounders, and that would be a 5-round contest if it was for an interim belt. I fucking love it. There's nothing to dislike about that.
Are we once again just shitting on Merab by not bringing him in here into this conversation? Because the hiccup in him getting a title shot is his teammate. Well, his teammate's hurt. They're not going to put him in an interim title fight to potentially then have to fight his teammate, right? Unless they want to F Aljo.
They might.
Unless they're James Conn saying, are you injured or you're hurt?
Both guys have to really hold the line. And in the case of Fitch and Koscheck, it worked because neither was the belt holder, right? They were all chasing GSP, and so there was just different opportunities to get ahead. This is different because one guy is holding the belt. And so as a consequence, you kind of have to like really sublimate your own interests for someone else's. I tend to think that only works for a time. But at the same time, BC, here's just the reality. The win over Aldo was legitimate in a way. Certainly the judges agreed, but it was hardly inspiring. Dude, you could do just the 4 names I picked. Sandhagen, Cheeto, O'Malley, and Cejudo. Any combination of those is fucking awesome. Any combination of them is awesome. Sandhagen, you couldn't put right away in a title fight. I don't think that would work. But all the other variations, all the other 3 guys you could put in a title fight or an interim title fight, and it would be great. So it's not like the UFC doesn't have options at 35. They got a lot of ways they can make this work, which also, by the way, to defend Sterling a little bit more, maybe he looked at it and I was like, dude, these guys have got to figure it out. I'm going to take my time while they do. And maybe he just said that's worth it to me. I can understand that as well. But here's what's going to happen, by the way, and you know this too, BC. What's going to happen is that he's going to fight the winner of whoever is ready for him by the time he comes back. He may win, certainly. But let's posit a scenario where Sterling waits this long, comes back and loses. Dude, the fans are going to assault him for it. Whether or not they're right. This whole idea is not that taking your time off guarantees your chances. Taking time off just gives you the very best chance that you have. And that's what Sterling appears to be reaching for here, quite understandably. Peak of his powers. This is the most money he's ever going to earn in the most high-profile fights he's ever going to be in. This is the time to make it all count. So you want to make sure you're healthy. But if it doesn't work out that way, he'll be assassinated for it, even though that isn't necessarily what he's trying to do. He's not trying to guarantee a win, just give himself the best chance.